like to call the meeting to order. Would everyone please stand and join us for the flag salute? Salute, pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Welcome back from our Thanksgiving break. We'll start out with the approval of our minutes from our regular meeting of November 14th. Can I get a motion there?
Move to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Move on to item B3, approval of the agenda and consent agenda.
Move to approve.
Second.
I'd like to pull 2 items from the consent agenda.
Okay.
C6, contract with Guy Smithson Painting and Decorating, and C7.
Okay, we'll put both of those in business operation facilities. Okay.
I also just, while we're under the topic of the consent agenda, without going into it specifically, the marine boat trip sounds really exciting. So congratulations to Ms. Pursoon for getting that on board. Yeah.
Okay. All in favor, or as a roll call?
Rogelio. Aye. Maureen.
Aye.
Michelle.
Aye.
Andy.
Aye.
And I'm aye.
All righty. Move on to public interest reports and presentations, and Anna's report.
Okay.
Welcome back.
Hello.
Did you have a good Thanksgiving?
Yeah, it was great. I had family come over, and they were there at my house for like all weekend.
Oh, good.
Yeah. So my student report for today is that, basically this week is the last week of November, and College App's deadline is coming up. It's November 30th. Students are basically putting their final touches on their applications to beat the November 30th deadline. Students have been working with our EAOP college counselor and academic counselors on their applications since the beginning of November. Prior to Thanksgiving holiday, CHS held its first annual Thanksgiving feast. So that was a major success at our campus. At the beginning of lunch, everyone was sitting in like all the tables in the middle of the quad, and it was fun seeing everyone just together. Students enjoyed a turkey dinner during lunch and pumpkin pie for dessert. It was very successful and many positive feedbacks were received from everyone involved. The event was organized by ASB under the leadership of Ms. Shamlin, and ASB would like to thank everyone who donated to this event. Another announcement is also prior to Thanksgiving, we had a canned food drive that whole week. We collected all cans that will be donated to the local food bank. And then tomorrow is Auntie May, our Fall Muses production performance, and it will be held November 29th through December 2nd. It starts at 7 p.m. in the cafeteria. So we'd like for you guys to please come and support anyone wanting to see it. And then last announcement, on Friday, December 1st, parents in education will be hosting a community service fair during extended learning. This will be a great opportunity for students to sign up and to complete their community service hours. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Anna. Okay, we'll move on to item D2 and Diana's recognitions.
Thank you. Tonight, on behalf of Principal Corneo, who's here and joined us tonight, he'd like to recognize Julie Shamblin for continuing to develop activities that enhance the school culture. Ms. Shamblin has led ASB for the past 9 years, and she also teaches social studies, virtual enterprise, and is also the cheer coach. During these past years, school assemblies, rallies, and dances are outdone each and every year. She organized the first annual Thanksgiving feast that Anna just shared with us, and it was a total success. Her dedication and commitment to CHS is demonstrated in each activity that she organizes. Ms. Shamblin continues to provide students with opportunities to experience the true CHS warrior spirit. And then on behalf of Principal Gloger at Rincon and Foothill, he'd like to recognize Arna Crittenden and her kitchen team for all their efforts to provide nutritious and delicious meals for the students and staff at Rincon High School. Every day, Arna and her team provide nutritious and delicious food in the morning and afternoon for the students and staff at Rincon. And this is no small feat because she and her team also provide food for the entire CHS community. Yet she finds time to prepare food and deliver it to the campus, whether it's teriyaki chicken, bagels and yogurt, or bagged lunches for field trips. Rincon students and staff are well taken care of and are able to focus on learning with a full stomach and a smile on their faces. Thank you, Arna and her team, for all that they do for students and staff. And then Principal Briggs, who also has joined us tonight, he'd like to recognize Cruz Martinez, and she is the administrative secretary at the middle school, for her hard work in the office and for always greeting visitors with a warm smile and a what can we do for you attitude. On behalf of Principal Pursoon at Canalino and Family School, she would like to recognize Martha Rugg, the instructional assistant, for her stellar work at the school, both in her official role and as a volunteer. Martha is dedicated to the kindergarten students with whom she works, as well as those she interacts with on the playground and in the cafeteria. In addition to these duties, Martha volunteered her time last year after school to run a 4th and 5th grade book club. She continues her commitment this year to student literacy by organizing a school-wide book drive to ensure that every one of the 600 students has a book of their very own to take home and spark the love of literacy. And then on behalf of Principal Fox at Aliso School, she'd like to recognize Diana Cruz, Josie Galvez, and Claudia Vargas for their support during parent conferences the week before Thanksgiving. Throughout the day, they have many responsibilities, but during the conference week, that increases immensely because along with their regular duties that week, the team supported many of our teachers with Spanish interpretation every afternoon during the conference. They are a valuable resource, assisting in presenting a clear and concise message to parents that parents are an integral part of their child's education and that we value the parents' ideas and their opinions. We thank Diana, Josie, and Claudia and their contributions to the Aliso team. And then on behalf of the Summerlin staff, Principal Fox would like to recognize Nicole Hughes for her outstanding work with 4th and 5th graders at Summerlin. She sets high expectations and establishes a culture for learning in her class. Her classroom is full of rich discussions around all subjects. When you are in her class, it's easy to see that Miss Hughes has a passion for learning and shares that with all her students. Her love of literature and science shine through, and we truly appreciate her devotion to providing new learning experiences for her students. And as Jacqueline mentioned earlier this month, along with her class, she took a 6-hour ride on a school bus along a windy road to provide the students the opportunity to participate in Astro Camp. That's true dedication. So we are thankful to have Nicole Hughes as a member of the Summerlin team. Thank you.
Great. Okay, we'll move right into your superintendent's report.
Okay, so I'd like to continue the appreciation. And tonight I'd like to recognize Special Education Director Kirsten Escobedo and her office staff, Yaneli and Tanya. They provide high-quality services and support for our most vulnerable families that have special education students. So we really thank them for their support. I'd also like to congratulate CHS Athletic Director Patrick Cooney and all the fall coaches and student athletes for a terrific fall season of high school sports. So congratulations to all the teams and the students. I'd like to remind you of Jolene's retirement party. So we are going to say goodbye to Jolene this month, December 13th, 5 to 8 p.m. at the Rincon Beach Club. And then the next day, we'll have an all-district reception at 4 o'clock in the district conference room. So please join us. In addition, I'd like to introduce and welcome our new director for the Carpentry Education Foundation, Pam Warner, and she's also a parent at the middle school and Canalino. And we appreciate the Education Foundation's all their fundraising efforts to support our schools. And I'd like to remind everyone that on Wednesday evenings we have Dine Out for Carp Kids, and then in March there'll be the O to O race. That is Ocean to Orchard or Orchard to Ocean?
Orchard to Ocean.
Okay, I gotta get the direction right. And then I also wanted to let you know that our CUSD Safety Committee, we have our district nurse, Joanne Hausman. She's offering CPR and first aid training to all employees, and that began this week. So we really appreciate that. We appreciate her efforts. In addition, I'm proud to announce that we finally have an emergency notification system.
Yeah.
And I hope that you all received a text
Yes.
message. It was a test message, and you received a text and an email.
Do you have a student?
Yes. And if you received it, right? You received it? Yes. So you probably did not receive it, but Andy, I hope you received it. Or your wife received it.
My wife did.
Okay,
I think I
great.
did.
All
She's
right.
the primary.
Yes. We will be adding the board members to the additional group, and so we just sent out the test message to all the parents and all staff. And we were able to check, and I think we had some errors, so we're fixing the errors now. So that we're excited about
Good
that.
to work out the kinks.
Yes, it
Where
is,
you need
before
to.
we actually need the system.
Yes.
Well, actually, it was a little late because we needed it earlier, but that's okay. That's all right. We're patient. Now we have it. I'm really proud that we do not. It's replaced the paper tree. Was it called a paper phone tree? That's what you call it. Okay. And then Maureen attended the CASBO CBO symposium the week before Thanksgiving. It was in Anaheim. And so the discussion was around the state of our schools, the state economy, and the national economy. Guest speakers included Kevin Gordon, who's president of the Capital Advisors Group, Jennifer Kuhn, who's the director of K-12 education in the California Legislative Analyst's Office, John Gray, who's president of School Services of California, and an economist from Research Beacon Economics. The overall theme, of course, included the anticipated political changes in California, as well as local funding, what that's going to look like, state funding, the LCAP, and the challenge facing our school budgets, particularly in the area of the escalating pension costs. So currently, CalSTRS and CalPERS, they've adjusted the rate of return on investments, but they've passed the increasing cost to fund liability to all public agencies, including schools. So rising pension increases make up over 60% of all new state dollars for schools. So when you add those rising pension costs to our collective bargaining increases, and then thirdly, the increasing costs of health and welfare, those increasing costs and expenditures outpace all of our revenue and the revenue coming to schools and state revenue. So we're not sure whether the current governor will include any pension relief in the January release of his final budget. But regardless of new revenues, it's clear that, like all school districts, we cannot sustain the increase over time without reductions. So we're not the only school district facing reductions. Most California school districts will have to be making some reductions because of those increasing pension costs and rising health and welfare benefits, as well as your collective bargaining agreements. So those three areas are what's increasing your expenditures.
So just on that note, interestingly, the governor, there was a report in, I think, the Sacramento Bee that he thinks he can adjust current pension benefits unilaterally. And so there's going to be there was a big article in the Sacramento Bee, so I'm sure there's going to be a big fight in the Assembly over that.
Well, stay tuned.
Yeah.
Yes. And of course, the state budget will receive more information when it's released in January. And then the last information is regarding the Measure U update. So our team met with, and myself and the Measure U team, we met with Maria Fisk and the board of the Carpinteria Children's Project to discuss the plans for the main school site. And so we are looking at the design process of replacing the portables and modernizing the existing buildings. And then the most important information is that the Citizens Bond Oversight Committee has 4 openings for members. So I want to encourage our community members to apply, and the applications are due by December 8th. And then it will be the board's responsibility, your responsibility, to approve those positions on January 9th. And then everyone should be looking for the Measure U newsletter. It will be distributed within the next 2 weeks.
What would you say is the time commitment for the Measure U Oversight Committee, approximately?
Pretty limited. They meet not every month,
I think they meet quarterly.
quarterly.
Quarterly?
Yeah.
So it's a couple of
For
hours?
a couple hours.
Couple hours.
Yeah, 4 times, yeah, a year. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Diana. All right, we'll move on to what the big crowd's here for.
Yes.
The assessment results of the 2017 California Assessment of Student Performance in Progress, CASP, and our single plan for student achievement presentations for the high school and middle school. And I see Mr. Briggs drew the short straw. Is going first.
That goes to the next. Okay.
Welcome.
No, I'm okay. I think I can see it. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Nice to see you.
Yeah. I can stand here. Okay. Well, good evening. And I'm a little nervous. My first board presentation at the board. And first off, I'd like to thank everyone so far for all the support that I've been given these first 3 months. Sorry, I got a little sore throat. Especially the other site principals, including Mr. Cornejo and of course Superintendent Rigby for all the help and support and guidance. Yeah, that would be great. Thanks. That I've gotten over the last 3 months, and so I feel like we're off to a great start. It hasn't been without its challenges for sure, but I think we're moving in a positive direction. So the presentation here, the single plan for student achievement, basically there's two. Well, first of all, I'll start with here, of course, the demographics, which we're all familiar with, about 500 students and the subcategories there. And here's the data, which I think we're all familiar with. And what I did on this slide is try to combine, the different graphs into one here. And so the first two are for all students, and this is 6th, 7th, and 8th. So the 8th graders would be this year's 9th graders, of course. But those were, when they were in 8th grade last year, going through the middle school and then so forth. And so you can see that for English language arts, it's around, we'll just call it 50%. And then for math, it's at least for the 8th graders, we'll call it around 40%, which is, it's pretty low. And then the area that we're going to be targeting in some of the school goals is for the English language learner population. And you can see that for English language arts, it's around, 10%, and math, we'll call it 5%, 6%, that have met or exceeded standards. So we have some low-hanging fruit there on the right with the EL populations, and that's kind of been the focus this year so far. And then this is the cohort data. So this is also last year's 8th graders. So what this is their last year's 8th graders, and then also when they were in 7th and in 6th. So this is through time. So this year's 9th graders, this is what they did while at the middle school, 6th, 7th, and 8th. And it's set up the same way where we have all students in English language arts and all students in math on the first two graphs, and then the EL populations. And if you look at it, it looks like for math it's rising for 6th, 7th, and 8th, and maybe language it peaks in 7th and comes down. But I'm just kind of looking at the averages right now, where they all kind of meet. And same thing, where we need to do a lot of work there. We're still hovering around 50% and 40%, and then same with the ELA and math. So I don't see in this data like significant information that would say we're doing a better job in 6th or 7th or 8th, or 5th, 6th, or 7th, because this would be, but it shows where we need to work for sure. Okay. Stay. Okay, so this first slide here, I just kind of put some. I was inspired by Aaron. He likes to use a lot of Google pictures. So I'm not going to go through all of these, but the thing I'm working here with is, obviously we need help with math, and we need to work in that area, and then English language arts as well. But the other kind of spoke in the wheel is we need to work with socio-emotional needs of the students. We have a real sort of deficit in their ability to communicate and, sort of modulate their emotions and et cetera. So we're going to be working on that also this year. And then additionally, I feel at the middle school, the schedule that I inherited, the master schedule, and the elective offerings are a little on the lean side, to say the least. And so we'd like to look for ways to increase opportunities for students. So, so that's kind of what the pictures there are representing. So goal number one, the first two goals are academic in nature. Although I feel the other two goals are also tied to that. But so the district goal, of course, is that 60% will meet or exceed proficiency on the English tests, and we're at about 50%. School goal, what we're kind of focusing on in this goal is that the English language learners who will right now they're at about 10 or 11%, that will get to 21% in all grade levels for MET and or exceeded for English language arts. Wow, I should have my hard copies. Do you have a copy? I thought I'd be able to see it. Okay, thank you. Okay, so the actions to reach this lofty goal of raising by 10% will be, we've already done some trainings with Dr. Pagan for English language development, and we're going to continue those trainings and et cetera to give the teachers the skills they need to reach this population. As probably been mentioned in the previous presentations by the elementary schools, we'll be using the Edmentum program and Exact Path to help run the diagnostics to find out exactly where these students are, and then be able to differentiate with the program, and also give them the needed supplemental activities to help. It says here we're going to implement a system of daily 30-minute designated ELD development in all grades. So what we've been doing is my assistant principal's been doing research on finding really good strategies, and every week distributing to the staff for them to use. And we've been getting good feedback, like we've tried this and it's worked, et cetera. We also this year, kind of at the last minute, we started 3 support classes for our ELD population, so level 1, 2, and 3, which corresponds with their CELT scores. We have about 20 to 24 kids in each of those levels, so they're getting additional support so that they can improve, and they still have their core class as well. So they're still in a core English class, and then they're additionally in the ELD support class, so they're getting core content. So that's new this year, we're working to improve that, and also just improving curriculum and looking at options for all ELA classes. Okay, so goal 2 will be tied to math. District goal: 50% of students will meet or exceed proficiency on the state test for math, and we're at about 40%. So we're gonna work on that as a school goal as well, but we're gonna focus in on the English language learners. And right now they're at, like we said, 6%. So we'd like to see a 10% rise there to 16% in all 3 grade levels. So similarly for math, we're going to use the Edmentum Exact Path. Also, it's math and English, as I'm sure you're aware, and kind of utilize it the same way, where run the diagnostics, find out where the kids are, meet them where they are, meet them where they're at, and use it to help differentiate, and then also see what other try to fill the gaps. So we'll know where their gaps are, and then work to address those needs. We also have 3 support classes similar to the ELD classes. They are in the morning, there's 0 period, and we added 1 this year, I think, for 6th grade. But we have 6th, 7th, and 8th. So students who need the extra support in math, we offer 0 period, and they come in and take that in addition to their content regular math class. I also want to say here that we're talking about the EL populations, and these are the specific goals, but I think it's important also to push the upper level kids as well. I know we don't really get a bump if they're already at MET or exceeds because they're already there, but we can't forget about that population of students and really find ways to push them as well, and offer additional challenges for them. And and it's same for English too, but just want to bring that up but the focus right here is on the EL populations because those numbers are so low. Additionally, which isn't in here, but I just want to mention, it's also the SPED population. They benefit from all these programs as well, and they're included in all this. It's just a smaller population number. And then, of course, to improve the curriculum, take a look at the curriculum in math and see if there's any ways how we can improve it school-wide. Okay. Goal number 3, improve the climate and culture of the middle school by developing school-wide positive behavior intervention supports, a system to improve student behavior and foster social emotional skills. And so this is comes from some of the Healthy Kids survey results that that there's always room for improvement for where students feel engaged in school and feel safe and feel they feel part of the experience, and so the slide there, self-management, self-awareness, decision-making, building relationship skills and social awareness, how your actions affect others. I don't feel like they don't get enough of that, and so we're working at ways to develop strategies and trainings, et cetera, so that we can really teach students these skills, which I think are really important. And the way we're going to do that is we've already done some of this, but so we have a school climate culture committee, which is just a small group right now kind of working on their own, and I'm giving them some direction, but also giving them a lot of autonomy, where they're researching ways to increase these social emotional skills for the students, and to work on the PBIS system, so it's less punitive and more supportive, so we can teach students how to make good decisions and teach them how to behave, how to have appropriate behaviors rather than just sort of punishing them. So it's tricky, but and the staff has been patient as we work through this, and basically we're starting from scratch. And so we've done professional development. We've already had a doctor come in and teach about ADHD and how to recognize it, how to work with those students. We're going to have people in for teaching about adverse childhood trauma, ACE, which is a key indicator on kids not doing well in school. And we're also bringing in a professional for nonviolent and compassionate communication. Because the way we communicate, and this works for adults too, right? So the way we communicate is it usually when there's a problem, some of our needs aren't being met, and we don't always know how to express that, and so a lot of times it comes off showing fear and anger, et cetera, and that's what the kids do, and they don't know how to modulate their emotions, and so we're going to try to work on that. Of course, restorative justice will be part of that, and then we already have teachers working on mindfulness techniques with the students, and it's been really, really positive. I've had students come and tell me that they've, even at home, their home life is better. They take their 5 breaths and kind of relax and try to make better decisions. So we're going to try to make it school wide. Right now, it's a small kernel, that we're working on. And lastly, is the goal 4 is to increase elective options for the students at the middle school. So you see the pictures I have there. It shows. I'm thinking a culinary track to and music and engineering, et cetera. Maybe. Well, I'll tell you in a second. But so I want to better prepare students for high school and beyond, and give them a sense of identity to the school while teaching them grit and helping them find their passion. A lot of the students don't. A lot of times when a kid comes in, I talk to them, and whatever it is, whenever they come in, I use that opportunity to find out what they're interested in, what they're passionate about. And I'll ask them what are you passionate about? When you wake up Saturday morning, what do you want to do? And they usually say, I want to go back to sleep. But when you have the kid that says, oh, I want to get my guitar out, or I want to go surf, or I want to start cooking, or whatever it is, like they all need to have that. And so few of them do at this age that we need to increase the opportunities, for that. The actions, some of the things we're working on. So I'm right now developing a leadership team, and my envision, we don't have a leadership team. We have a department chairs and it's, I guess in the past, that's been everything. And so what I want the department chairs to focus on academics, pacing calendars, curriculum, state testing, et cetera. And then I want a leadership team that focuses on looking how other schools are providing different enrichment opportunities for the students, and of course the social emotional training and the school culture, and building up ASB and leadership, et cetera. So we're building that now, and one of the goals is to go look at other schools and look at other options for master schedules and things that are working. We'll also be, of course, surveying the students and parents and staff on what kinds of things they want in terms of electives at the middle school. And I want to collaborate with the high school with their career tech education, and maybe get tied into the pathways and the grants that they're using. So maybe we can have a couple that stray through 6 through 12, all the way through. And then I want to work with facilities to turn the wood shop room into engineering center. I walked into there and I was like, wow, this is just. And I asked Measure U people, and they said, no, that's just where we keep our blueprints. But after that, there's no plan for it. And I said, okay, well, let's look into that. So that's just a little bit of the things we're trying to do at the middle school. Do you have any questions or comments?
Bless you.
Go
Yes.
ahead, Leo.
Okay, you mentioned 4 goals to improve math, to improve English language arts, to improve student behavior, and then to have more elective options for the students. Now, which one is the hardest goal to meet? Which one is that?
The toughest one would probably be to raise math scores, to be
It's
quite honest.
50%, correct?
Yeah. To go from 40 to raise 10%, I think that's going to be the most challenging thing across the board, solidly.
Okay, because English language, the goal is 60%, to upgrade to 60%, correct?
Correct.
For next year, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now, student behavior. Last year, I think, if not mistaken, I think it was 45 students facing disciplinary action. Is the middle school down on that?
Yeah, there's actually 76 suspensions last year. It was 76
altogether, but the middle school.
at the middle school.
At the middle school.
Yeah.
How many do we have right now? Let's say half.
I'd probably say like right now, I think we're about 16 for the year.
So that's probably will, if the math continues,
Right.
then it's about 32, 34 for the school year, which is roughly, it's pretty good.
Yeah. Well, and you bring up a good point, and that was one of the things when I came in. There's a lot of issues, a lot of areas that needed improvement, and that was the one that was kind of very glaring. And so in the 22 years, this is my 4th year as administrator, and even as a teacher, and the suspension's kind of the last means. So that's when all other options have kind of failed. So even in board policy, the administrative regulations, they list about 14 things that you can do before suspension, including restorative justice and SST meetings and getting parents involved. And so that's what we've been doing. The suspensions that we've had this year have been sort of mandatory suspensions, been fights. So, or somebody filming the fight. But, in terms of the suspensions from last year, a lot of them were for things that you probably could have worked with the kids with to help them make better decisions. So both my whole team, the counselors and Ms. Ruley, suspension is the last resort. Okay, so what we want is change behavior so that they learn from the mistakes and that they make better decisions. And so the part where they're, a lot of the behavior problems in classrooms, just normal classroom misbehavior is, the students need to be more engaged in the class. So they got to have a reason to be there. They got to want to be there. They don't want to miss out. Even tardies, if there's a big tardy problem, what that kind of tells me is the kids don't want to get to class in a hurry. So we need to change what goes on in the classroom so that they don't want to miss out. And also it's a connection to the school. So right now there's not a lot of, there's some, but we need more things to keep them hooked into the classes and that they want to show up to school for. And if they're involved in band, if they're involved in engineering If they're involved in, the cooking classes, like a pathway, like culinary pathway, and they have goals. That's one part of it. And then the social emotional part is, if they're showing up and if they can regulate their emotions and they're just generally happier, their grades are going to go up. So it's like spokes in a wheel. So I don't think you could just focus on raising math scores, for example. Just focus on that by trying to improve curriculum and math instruction and get much of a benefit. It has to be everything. It's a holistic approach. And it's going to take time, but that's, but yeah, so I can't control how many suspensions we have because, if a kid all of a sudden gets in a fight, I can't let them, I got to have the consequences so that they realize that they can't get away with that, But then on the other hand, we're going to spend a lot of time with those kids who got in the fight when they come back and do the restorative justice and, talk them through it and find out why they made those decisions so that they don't do it again. That's what I'm going to look at as a means of sort of success or not is the repeats. I don't want a high number of suspensions or discipline problems, but what I want to look at is the repeats. If I don't have anybody repeating, I'm going to feel like I've been successful. So
It's very good. Thank you.
sure.
Jacqueline, go ahead.
What's the percentage of English learners? Population?
That's
No.
Hispanic.
No, it's
bad.
the EL population.
27%. 27%.
So it seems to me that the goal to increase, especially for language arts, to increase the scores, it's not entirely logical because if you are successful, wouldn't they transition out of English learners? And so the goal to have that increase doesn't seem logical. Because if they're good enough to increase their scores for language arts, wouldn't they transition out as a English learner?
Yeah, and
So
that is the problem with like measuring it, the EL populations, because it does. What you'd like to do is just have them all test out.
Right.
And this year we had 45, and we had big celebration for them. But there still is there's new ones coming in, and so if they meet or exceed, then yes, of course they'll be out. But
so the low score is not an alarming figure because it is expected. They are either these are the kids who can't transition out because they're having some learning challenges. So the low score, it seems to me that the goal is more logical is to have them transition out instead of trying to increase from 16% to 16%, because once they are at some sort of level, then they are no longer English learners, right? So if you're successful in increasing their score, they're no longer English learners. So to set a standard like that would be, I don't know if it's achievable because this is expected. The scores like this. Math, on the other hand, you should set, doesn't matter. You should be able to teach a kid to increase their math level, but the better they are in these English language arts, the more likely they're not going to be English learners. Am I making sense?
No, you make a really good point, and it's. Yeah, I mean, we're going to focus on the EL population to help get them up to where they will transition out. And then also getting the whole school from 50 to 60% is, the other goal.
So that's an interesting number to look at, is to get the whole school population. I just don't want people to look at the numbers and get alarmed because the numbers it's illogical. This is to be expected that English learners at this stage who haven't been able to transition out are having challenges. And so, but if they no longer face those challenges, they're no longer in that population. So
that's true.
New ones will come in.
Right, exactly. But then low scores are to be expected. So don't get panicky about that.
Yeah,
but
it's not the whole picture.
Right.
So I think that's the point you're making. It's not the whole picture. And so what we can suggest is that you also include the redesignation criteria.
Right.
And I think what Ron was indicating is that the redesignation rate is not as high as it needs to be. And I think that's part of your conversation with about the EL students performing higher on the ELA test. It really is about redesignating EL students.
Right.
Yes.
But just to clarify in terms of these numbers, if a student takes the test as an EL learner, we get the results back with them still classified as an EL student. Is that correct?
Yes.
So so if we did increase it by 10%, it would still show up as a big jump and possibly allow for them to have. So I think it's a lofty goal, because it's not like we're going to lose that data. It's not like that data is misrepresenting our results.
No.
It's not the whole picture.
If they've performed well in this year, chances are they're going to move out of that population
Next year.
So your numbers will never be, you will never achieve that number, sustain that number.
Right,
See,
right.
It's not sustainable.
Your EL percentage won't
Right,
change.
right. It's
But
such a
your-
small
your
picture.
All students will
And
change.
if we keep focusing on that, I think we're not doing this
I-
population service.
I guess holistically, from a district point of view, if we keep pushing for reclassification at the earliest possible
Yes.
age, and then our sample size by junior high is only 5 kids, we probably won't look at that. It won't be a viable statistic to look at anymore. But right now, it's a pretty big chunk of the population, and so we have to try harder, I think.
Michelle.
And we also have to encourage them to try their hardest on now it's going to be the LPAC,
Yes.
right? Because that's another problem is a lot of EL kids could be out of EL, but they, for one reason or another, they don't want to take the test, or they don't want to be in that, so they don't do their best on what used to be the CELT test. So, but while they're part of our ELD program, we want to get them, get their skills set up as high as we can.
So we get another acronym to work with.
Exactly.
LPAC, yeah.
Michelle.
So you inherited, like you said, some things that were already in motion when you came in. And I really appreciate that half of your goals are social emotional, because I think that that's a huge piece. So what are some specific budget considerations you want us to keep in our minds as we go forward with your plan?
On the social emotional part or
All
the
of it.
electives
Yeah.
part?
All of it, yeah.
Well, again, I think to make the school, there's reports that, someone sent me just in terms of music, when you look at schools that have a robust music population, apples to apples, their test scores are higher, and their grades are higher, et cetera. And it's the same thing with a strong kind of leadership ASB program and strong electives, STEM, STEAM. So I guess if you could just give me a blank check so I could turn the wood shop into whatever it is I want to turn it into,
So
that'd be a
for
good start.
Facility needs, yeah.
Yeah, so facilities, and then obviously a music program that's not just sort of like right now. It's they get pulled out of PE a few days a week to do music, and it's
a
not
choice.
part of the.
Not
it's not
acceptable.
Yeah.
So, and I know it's difficult, but the other thing is our master schedule it limits us also the way it's designed. So we're gonna have to look at that. And see if there's some, I think there's a lot of changes we can make there. I've already looked at a lot of different schools that do it a little bit differently, but it's subtly differently, but it's a big difference overall that allows more flexibility. Because right now there wouldn't be any room to put these electives the way it is right now. So we need to have an open mind when it comes to looking at the master schedule and how we and the daily schedule. Yeah.
Yeah, I think everyone's made some good points here. I think the one thing that always kind of strikes me when we get these reports is that we focus so much of our energy and resources on bringing that bottom English learner population up, or the underachieving students, and we tend to kind of take for granted the higher achieving, maybe middle achieving students. And then when they get to the high school, and I think we run into this situation, elementary school through middle school, and they get to the high school, in the first couple years, if the teachers at the high school haven't lowered their standards and they're teaching to the level they should be, we find that those high achieving students don't necessarily, they struggle for the first year or two to kind of get up to speed, the ones that have the ability to. But then we have a whole middle segment that maybe could have reached that level, but they didn't get that support at the lower grade levels, and so they're not quite getting there and then they go to college and they don't know how to write well, and so I really think we need to, I mean, I know we have limited resources, but I would really like to develop a plan on how we can engage parents, engage the students more at the middle school level, because we can see it in our scores, we can see it in our Healthy Kids survey, where in elementary school the students feel engaged, they feel safe, they feel part of a family, and then 6th grade it's maybe falls off a little bit. 7th and 8th grade you're in the abyss, and so I know some of it is the age, the adolescence, and everyone's kind of trying to figure themselves out, but I almost think it's more than that, and I've been trying to figure it out. I have 3 kids, or 3 that are my third's in the middle school now, and trying to figure out what the symptom is, or what the cause of the problem is, and I see part of it is there's some apathy on the part of parents, but I think from my perspective, there's this tendency where the kids they don't really have a teacher that they're going to all the time as their teacher, and so they kind of get lost, and they don't feel like they're I don't know, as connected as they could be, and I'd really like to take a school that does have good connectedness and try to model that, because I really think that's what we're missing. I mean, I hate to use the analogy, but at the school, at the pool in town here, certain people have said, if your kid's a superstar, you're probably not going to want to stay in Carpinteria, and I almost feel like that is what we're telling some families, that if your kid's really good, our schools aren't for you, and I don't want that to be the case. I want our schools to be the choice for everybody, because we do have great programs, and I really think it's important that we communicate this with our staff, so that they can try to start working out themselves, because the staff is a really big part of that. And I don't know if you've had any thoughts or feelings about how to get more engagement. I know what you've presented here is a good start, but if you really get down into the weeds, because you're coming to us from a pretty successful high school. Cabrillo High School is a very successful high school with good connectivity, or connectedness and student engagement, and I'm just curious if you've identified any disparities or any kind of trends one way or the other.
Well, the short version, which I'm not very good at giving the short version, but ever since No Child Left Behind came out, and I was at Hueneme High, and when that came out, and the tests, AYPs was all the rage, and so, like you said, if you were at MET or Exceeds, you were forgotten. Mm-hmm. And then what Hueneme did, my second year there, basically they got rid of all electives to make room for all the remedial math and English classes, because all the way below basic kids needed, and so otherwise your scores were so low, as a school, your AYP scores were so low that you had threats of being closed down or taken over. So it was this big shift that all the resources went to those needs of the students who have needs, of course, but then it was at the sacrifice of the other ones. And so what it does, it kind of brings the whole school down pride-wise. Yep. So I agree with that, and that's kind of the short version. I fully understand that. So, rising tide raises all ships, right? So if we can get the middle and the upper level of the kids to be pushed academically and socially and have high expectations for them, and that's not just a platitude, but actually expect them to lead the school. And a lot of these things I want to do, I want it to be student-centered. I want the students to come up with the ideas on how we do these things and get their help and their input and make them feel like they're part of it, not just coming to the school, but they are, the identity is with them. And so that not only, because if you're low performing, let's say you struggle in math and English, you have other skills, you have other things. So if you start excelling in an art class or you start excelling in a music class, then you're going to be more positive and engaged and connected to the school, that you're going to have more motivation to try in the other ways, in the other disciplines, like in English and math, for example. So it's a cultural thing where I agree. It's there's a lot of kids that come up to me and they say, why can't we do this? Why can't we do that? And I'm like, be patient. I'm with you. I mean, Foothill was a Renaissance school through and through. And so we had all kinds of Renaissance program, a really robust ASB/Renaissance, and there's tons of kids in there that were leaders, and they organized everything. And then they would, even when it was time to develop new programs, the students were involved. And so that gives them that autonomy and that sort of sense of mastery and purpose, and it motivates them. So it's going to take a while, but I want to, because there's a whole wealth of untapped resource there, and those are the kids. And I've been working with them, and we've been, and the ASB is now at like 26 strong, and they meet once a week at lunch, and they're starting to develop, come up with ideas and do things. And it's not just, carnivals and yearbooks, but it's also, I want them to come up with ideas on how to make the school better academically and so forth. As far as the staff goes, yeah, we have to have high expectations for them, and if they're not meeting them, we have to help them, give them the supports to do that. And that's what I hope to do with the leadership team, which I'm just forming and just kind of getting that figured out. I'm learning new stuff every day about the school, and I don't feel like I've got a full picture yet. And, after 3 months, I figured a lot of it out, but every day I go, oh, okay, so that's how that's done here, kind of thing, and then kind of note it down, and how we're going to make that change. Change is tough, and being the newest guy and literally the newest person besides two teachers, it puts me at a bit of a disadvantage, because I have to build all the relationships first before I can expect them to, follow me, and I'm doing that, person by person, one sort of interaction at a time, and with the students as well, and with the parents as well too. I feel, anytime I have a parent interaction, I try to get the most out of it and build that relationship, so that when I come to them for help, they'll see that the vision that I have is viable, and they'll want to kind of jump on board. So, but did that answer your question? I mean,
yeah, we
right, we talk all night,
and
right.
We could talk all night. But I really like the idea of getting the extracurricular, the electives back at the school, because that's been a long time missing. And I think that's going to help us get more students engaged and feel connected to school, because not everybody's academically oriented, and what's interesting is what I've seen. And this is just anecdotal, but you see the kids, typically kids who are really good at sports are held up on a high standard, they're held up as being this really great kid. But then if you're really good at the piano or clarinet or the flute, or if you're really good at math, sometimes you're looked down upon. You're kind of, you're the nerd. And I think that's a cultural thing at the school, and maybe it's the age, but it'd be really nice, and I know you mentioned that we get those kids that are high achieving in those areas kind of put up on the same level as the kids who are the good athletes, and because really when it comes down to it, that's a lot more important than being a good athlete.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Maureen.
Yeah, I have a few thoughts. I've just been taking notes, and just to throw my 2 cents in a little bit with this idea of school climate or something along those lines. Some of the research that I've looked at said that programs that have socioeconomic diversity, academic programs that have socioeconomic diversity, have been shown through research to have the best results in terms of elevating both the low achieving and the high achieving students. So I thought that was kind of interesting, because I feel like that's not a metric that gets looked at very often. And the thing that made me think about is the change of, I wonder, and I don't know, I don't have an answer to this, but it might be something worth looking at, how many of our students are leaving the district at 5th grade, and where are those, who are those families, and why are they leaving? Because I think that affects then who comes into our middle school and maybe that's also a good indicator of what programs, if we're having this real basic school with no electives, parents want those electives, and parents who can afford to make the choices to provide those for their kids are going to want them. On the flip side, if we can have a more potentially a robust and dynamic and diverse socioeconomic group, then that's going to be better for everybody. So that's just my 2 points on that.
Makes sense.
Yeah, and then just some thoughts. Do you know about the organization AHA?
Yep.
Okay, yeah. So I think the social emotional wealth, they have a peacemakers program that would probably be perfect. I keep harping on about the high school too, but I think it might be perfect because I feel like the peer-to-peer mentorship is really crucial at this age. Making good peer-to-peer connections would be really helpful. Just a question, is reading still offered at or required at the middle school level?
I'm sorry, I don't understand the question.
There used to be just a class called reading.
Oh, no.
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 And so is there a requirement of how much reading they do each day?
I don't know. I don't have that in front of me. I know that
Okay.
they do.
The
I don't know what the
sixth
number
graders,
would be.
they're still doing the
Sixth
AR.
Yeah,
graders.
and they do
Okay.
the AR, and
It's
they get
just-
the AR points, and
Yes.
they're encouraged to read all the time, and,
They're all-
and it's
they're
part of their
amazing.
grade.
And they have
Okay.
science sustained reading.
Oh, they do.
I don't know
They
what
have
the-
SSR. Because it used to be just a course, like
No,
a
no.
whole hour of SSR, which...
Not an hour of it, but they
Um,
do have it in their
and-
English language arts.
Mr. Good Goldie did
I
that.
had a different guy, yeah. And then Muses, is that still happening? Is there a theater program at the junior high?
There's a Spotlight Club, which is
It's a club. It's
after
not a
school.
class anymore. Okay. And then
what was it called before? Muses.
Muses, it was the same, taught by the same person at the high school.
Okay.
And she taught it and she's still, well, anyways.
Right.
So,
Nope,
Oh.
it's gone.
okay, it's gone. Another thought about, have you ever broken the math data down by gender?
Not at this school, not yet.
Okay, because there is also research indicating that female students have a real plummet in self-esteem related to math and sciences in junior high. And so that might be something where just analyzing the data that way and really focusing on bringing up the numbers of female students might help your overall picture. I do think I witnessed it myself in junior high. Girls who were very confident up until that point, they really plummet in terms of their self-esteem around academics, and I think especially around math and science. So just a thought. I'm giving you all my notes. My last point being, I think we kind of mentioned it, but in terms of trying, I think you hit the nail on the head with not math scores aren't going to just go up by themselves. So like you said, doing things like STEAM or music, a science fair. I don't know if there's a science fair anymore, but
No, not that I know
an
of.
after-school activity, something to really focus, and project-based learning, something to really say, almost trick them into learning math, I think is a way. And Andy said that, some kids just aren't academic. I actually kind of, in my experience, don't believe that, in the sense that a student can become academically oriented provided the right opportunity to be interested in a subject, if that makes sense.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So a kid that's like, I don't like poetry, but suddenly you engage them in the right way and they're reading books of poetry. So,
But yeah, there's two things that go on. It's a knowledge gap, right? So
Yeah.
if the gap's too wide, they know this and they got to get to here. They're not going to like whatever it is. I don't like math. I don't like English. I don't like, philosophy. But if you can get them close enough so that gap's more narrow and they can make the jump and you can build that into the curriculum. Also, for the motivation piece, I'm just stealing from Daniel Pink, but it's mastery, purpose, and autonomy. So same thing. So when you do project-based learning, like you said, and it could be project-based learning, like actually building things, or project-based learning in the science classes. If they feel like they have the skills and they're not just doing kind of a recipe, but
exactly.
they're discovering how to do this, and they feel that sense of mastery and purpose, and then they have some autonomy. So it's not just a recipe. They're going to be more motivated to be academic, and if they feel success also, and it could be success in something else, like we said, music, or they're very proud of that, and then they can take that same sort of self-esteem and that idea that, I can do this. I do have skills, and then they don't feel as intimidated when they're trying something new. I mean, we all know if you learn something difficult, then the next thing that you learn is easier to learn because you've kind of developed that motor and that muscle, So I agree.
Well, it's like talk to any 30-year-old surfer in Carpinteria, and he's actually like a an oceanographer. He just doesn't know it. You know what I mean? So if you
absolutely.
teach wave dynamics as it relates to something that they understand, then they'll be interested. The last thing is just a little motivational piece. Not that you need it, but my feeling about CARP is just that people want something to rally behind. They want to have a reason to get excited and be positive. We're generally positive people, I think. And so I think with, in terms of the electives and trying to, reimagine the middle school, I would say go for it and be bold. And, I know you're trying to kind of take things step by step, but I would say maybe choose one program, and it's almost, not that it doesn't matter, but it almost doesn't matter what it is, whether it be music or engineering, and just get behind it. And if it could be a program that touched every student, wasn't just something that hit the low achieving or the high achieving, but really a project that, or a course or a program that was, something that Carpinterians could really be proud of, I think you would be surprised by how quickly ideas could turn around and people would really get behind it, I think. So.
Yeah, I just want to mention that we do have the art program that was approved, and it's kind of a pilot, and it's all sixth graders, and Lori Pincus is running it, and 3 days a week, 4 periods a day, and it's fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
Like the kids love it. I've been there a lot, and the teachers, it's huge, and in terms of those sixth graders now feeling, they don't all go through at the same time. So, but they go through in waves. And the way she does it is it's a building block, so they learn some skills in the first one, and then, and then the next one they build on them. And then so they're, doing this project. And as it goes on, they, because everybody's afraid they can't do art. I draw stick people, and most people aren't natural artists. But she teaches them and gives them those skills, so they feel they start to come out of. You see some really shy kids that are coming out of their shell, if you will, expressing themselves this way. So so we need more opportunities like that, so they can express and show who they are on the inside. So that hopefully then it'll translate into them being better math and English students.
Great. Thanks
Anything
a lot.
else?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ron.
Thank you.
Great job.
You've only got 2 minutes.
Do you have any questions? So, good evening. First, I want to congratulate Mr. Briggs for doing a great job at the middle school. He's taking the bull by the horns and trying to change the culture. I always remind myself that in order to change a culture of a school, it takes 6 years. So it's a commitment for a long time, and you're not going to see the changes in a year. You're not going to see them in 2 years, but it's going to be a 6-year process in order to change the culture of a school. So just to remind that of everybody. This is my 11th year at Carpinteria High School. I think I've enjoyed every year of that, of those, and I'm here to present to you the single plan for student achievement. And I am going to begin with the demographics. When I started in 2006, we had almost 900 students. We're down to 596 students at Carpinteria High School. And everybody says, well, that's great, but at the same time, the fewer students you have, the fewer opportunities present themselves. And everybody gets to play sport now. Everybody gets to go out and go out into muses. They all get a part, but at the same time it puts stress on the master schedule because you have fewer students in certain classes. So just to keep that in mind as we move forward. 71% of our students are Hispanic, 23% are white, and 6% are other students. 52% of our students qualify for free and reduced lunch, and 22% of those students of the 596 are English learners. When I started at Carpinteria High School, that number was almost 38%. So the current data, just to give you some background, is where are we now? Well, the district goal is 60% of the students will meet or exceed proficiency of the English Language Arts test. Carpinteria High School is at 58.82%. I know it's not up there, but I always my competitive nature sometimes wants me to go online and look at what other schools have done, and I'm always proud of what we've been able to do at Carpenter High School. And at 50% of the students will meet or exceed proficiency in math in the state test, Carpenter High School is at 46.3%. For those of you that have been on the board for a couple of years, we have not had experience, we had never experienced such great scores in math for a long time. We now have a consistent math department, and I think it shows in the test scores and the commitment of those teachers in developing the curriculum. Just a quick overview of the CASP test scores from 2015 to 2017. The idea is that you want the last two sections, the sections of nearly met and not met, you want those bars to go down, and then you want the bars on the standard exceeded and the standard met to go up. One of the interesting things for the high school, different from the middle school and elementary, is we only test in the 11th grade. We don't test in the 9th, we don't test in the 10th. So when we look at these test scores, we have to take a look and not only see what happened with these students, but what can we do to develop assessments along the way for 9th and 10th grade so these numbers are not a surprise and that we actually know what happened, and to provide early interventions for those students prior to the 11th grade. As we move forward, next year will be the first year we do science, so that will be a different, we will be adding something new. And in 3 years, you'll be adding, or 4 years, you'll be adding social studies. And unfortunately, they all happen to be in the 11th or 12th grade. So is what can we do in the 9th and 10th grade to support our students to be able, for us to be able to have data to give us some guidance on how our students are performing. The math, if you take a look, we have, again, the first two areas are the area of exceeded the standard or standard met. And if you take a look, we've moved students along the way to the side that we want. But and I'll get into the other deeper data here in a minute. But those are the overall results of our test scores for the last year. When we break it down into subgroups, this is where it gets very interesting. And just to point out on the EL students, the EL students that we have there are a total of 24 students. 8 of them were in the country for less than 24 months. So that is the reason you don't have them standard exceeded or standard met. And it goes back to the same question you asked Mr. Briggs, is how fast can you reclassify those students, because ultimately they will end up outside of that group. And for a student that has arrived to the U.S. and they haven't had the 3 years of math, they haven't had the 3 years of English, it becomes very difficult to perform well on those assessments. But at the same time, I always tell my teachers, students are not going to learn if they don't develop the relationship with the adults. If they don't have a reason to be at school, and if they don't have something that makes them be part of that school. Once you develop the climate, or once you develop a good culture on that campus, students will ultimately want to learn and perform well for their schools. And I always go to the classes before the test, and I always tell the students, this is also just like you compete out on the court or out of the football field or soccer field or basketball court. This is a way of also demonstrating what we do in the classroom. Because there is no impact on grade-wise. Students take the test in 11th grade, and unfortunately what happens for our 11th graders, this test is given to them in the last 2 weeks of May after AP testing. So they've already been testing for 2 weeks, and then we take them back and take this test. So we have to encourage those students to do well. One of the reasons that students were able to take these tests at times very seriously is the fact that the California State University used to have the early assessment program. So if you performed at the standard met or the standard exceeded, you didn't have to take the placement test for the college. So they're bringing that back. So that's the reason we have an ERWC class, English writing and composition class. So if the students get a C or better, if if they performed at the standard nearly met or the standard not met, if they get a C or better, it's as if they had met the criteria for not taking the assessment test at the state level. And something, it used to be, I don't know, but a long time ago, if you performed well on the EAP, when you went out and got a C best, if you had a score on that, you didn't have to take the test. So I did not know that. So for math, again, if you take a look, the idea is to remove the students or move the students from the left to the right. And these are the subgroups. So if you take a look at our all, last year was the first year we used our new curriculum, Big Ideas Math. Before then, it was all used teacher-developed curriculum. So last year was the first time. This is also the first time that we have a curriculum for English, which is My Perspectives. And that is the curriculum for 9th, 10th, and 11th grade. We piloted last year in 11th grade. Any questions so far? So the first goal is the district goal. So it's 60% of our students will meet or exceed proficiency in the language art state tests. And what are we going to do to support this? Well, one of the things is we need to assess our students at least 3 times a year in the 9th and 10th grade by using Edmentum, which is our new program, and to provide additional supports for students to master academic content. So, and I'll explain to you what we're going to do. Also use professional learning communities to identify teaching strategies that support student engagement and the academic growth, using the EL strategies that Mr. Briggs was mentioning that we were trained, the staff was trained by Dr. Pagan from Santa Barbara County Education Office. And also to provide professional development in the integration of Edmentum and My Perspectives in all language art courses. Right now, when a student is struggling in reading or struggling in math, it's wait and see until they fail. So the idea is to identify those students early on and assign them a prescribed program in Edmentum. And using extended learning and using our after-school program is encouraging those students along with the parents. One of the things that we're going to do during the winter break is we're going to meet with all of our parents of students who got D's and F's and ask them, this is what we need you to do to help us with your son or daughter to make sure that they don't fail second semester. This is what we're offering your son or daughter next semester. It could be after school, it could be an evening class, but we're going to provide that intervention for our students. One of the things that I've always said is that school should not be from 8 to 3 p.m. There's no reason why we could not have classes at 6 p.m. for those students that perform well in the evenings. So those are the things that we've been working with. The math department is very open to the idea. And also, as we move into Measure U construction mode, is what do we do when we don't have the facilities to do summer school? How are we going to support our students that had D's and F's? Goal 2 is high-quality standards-based instruction. The goal is to increase student achievement in math to 50% met or standard exceeded. And it's to develop an assessment calendar for each math course. We currently have Math 1, Math 1 Plus, Math 2, Math 3, Pre-Calc, AP Calc, AP Stats, and Math 1A and Math 1B. That's a lot of courses. And each math teacher has taken on one of those courses and made it their own. They've developed the curriculum, they've developed using my Big Ideas curriculum, and they are now developing those assessments so that we can give those to the students in the 9th and 10th grade so that we do not have surprises in the 11th grade. And use Edmentum to provide additional interventions for students. So one of the things that we're focusing on right now is for the students that are failing Math 1 is during the winter break, I'm going to meet with the parents, meet with the students, telling them the importance of why it's to pass math. One of the things for high schools is we're also being measured not only on graduation rates, like the district is, we're also going to be measured on how many students meet A through G. So A through G, for certain courses, if you get a D first semester and you get a C or better second semester, it validates the first semester. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at what did the student fail first semester, what was the reason, assign them a prescribed program. At the same time, they will be taking the same math class second semester, but working in the concepts that they failed first semester, so that the student can get a C or better second semester and validate first semester and continue to be A through G eligible. That is something that we're going to be looking at and doing next semester. And also to develop opportunities for peer-to-peer observations for teachers. I have a lot of new staff on my campus. I've always said teaching can be in a very isolating profession. You can just be in your classroom all day, but at the same time, it's getting them out, seeing what other schools are doing, seeing what their colleagues are doing. A lot of the wealth of information, and we have a great resource right on our campus. Just by talking to your colleagues, asking them, what are you doing differently than I am doing? Why is it that my students perform better or less than yours? But learning from each other and how did they approach the lesson differently from one another. Goal 3 is to increase student achievement in math language to 60% or exceed it, and that is to increase student writing opportunities and provide feedback for each writing sample. One of the things that the English department is very proud is trying to provide feedback for everything that is written by the student. Because a lot of times you and I went to high school, we would write these essays and we would just get a grade and no feedback. Well, now the English department is slowly trying to, we first write the rough draft, we will provide you feedback, then we go back and write the final draft with the feedback provided by the teacher. And that, I think that's very valuable. And teachers will collaborate in instructional strategies and implement my perspectives curriculum. This is the first year we're implementing the curriculum across the 3 grades, and it's a learning curve. And the reason is because it's technology based. So the great thing about it is for the students that struggle in reading, they can take their phone and project it onto the page, and the phone will read you the story, or there may be a video associated. So as we develop into more of a curriculum that is based on technology, this is a great curriculum for it. At the same time, the students are working out of a consumable, so it's not a textbook. And one of the things that the social studies department and the English department did, they got together and they said, when are you covering the Constitution? Because there's a unit in my perspectives about the Constitution. So if they're able to correlate their calendars, students will be able to hear about the Constitution in social studies and also hear about the Constitution in English in different perspectives. And also identify opportunities to collaborate with other departments to introduce English language arts standards across the curriculum. And that's, I just gave you an example of what the science department, the social studies department did. It's not easy because it's having to readjust your pacing guides, and also at the same time is sometimes you may not want to cover the Constitution to the depth that you want it to because the English department has to move quickly, or vice versa, but this is an opportunity for those 2 departments to work together and figure out, when we talk about the Constitution in English, it's very different than when we talk about the Constitution in U.S. history. Different reasons, different debates occur in those discussions because one of them is from the English perspective and the other one is from the social studies perspective. Goal 4, and this is it's kind of funny. This is my many years at the high school, and I always was amazed at the few numbers of parents that showed up to my parent support group. Last week we had the largest group we had like 20 or so. And one of the parents said, I would have come to these meetings if I had known that they were not a support group. And I said, what do you mean? She goes, well, it says parent support group. And she thought it was a support group for parents having difficulties. So, and I thought, wait a minute, that's a reason why. So we discussed it at that meeting that we are going to change it to parents for Carpinteria High School because that's what parents are used to at the elementary and the middle school. So I hope to see more parents after that. But I had never thought about that. So it's increased parent participation in our ELAC and parent support group, and it's now Parents for Carpinteria High School. And we also plan to create a quarterly newsletter, but also inviting our CT program to provide articles into that newsletter, taking some of the highlights from the athletic department, taking 1 or 2 essays from students, taking 1 or 2 recipes from our culinary arts, taking something from our social studies or science, bringing all those groups and departments together in a newsletter that we can provide and that we can have our graphics program produce. Also, increase parent enrollment in Parent Square. This is something that we want to do. A lot of our parents are still struggling with Parent Square, are not getting the news that we want. So it's how are we going to increase the opportunity to do that. So one of the things that we hope to do is at the beginning of second semester is have a parent at our 9th grade, 10th grade, and 11th grade nights. For the first 5 minutes or so is ask everybody to download the app and then or show them how to get into their Parent Square account. And also, we haven't done these in a long time, and we're going to do these in this winter break, is introduce parent and teacher conferences. I remember when I was a student, I hated those because my mom always came to the high school. I was a good student. She always came to hear the great things. But it's something that we don't do much at high schools, and we want to do that. And also to provide students with meaningful activities that are student-initiated. I think we have a significant amount of groups that are at Carpenter High School, clubs, that can go for a year and then they die off or there's no interest. But the idea is to encourage students to go to the ASB, find an advisor, say this is the club that we want, and at least it engages the students for that year or 2 years down the line. And again, our rallies, we can have 90 to 150 students out in doing a skit that Ms. Shamblin is able to get those kids to do, along with the cheerleaders, along with the ASB students. The last rally that we had, we probably had a good 200 or 300 students participating in the rally. And it's finding those teachers like Ms. Shamblin, finding the teachers like Ms. Bryant that engage the students early on, which is now Ms. Gill, engage the students early on in the 9th grade and then make them part of our school. And I think that's an important thing. We don't have graffiti on our campus. We don't have a lot of issues because students take pride in their school. And if something goes wrong, everybody wants to help and support the high school. The Healthy Kid Survey that was given out last year, we're giving it out this year, there is no other high school in the area that can match the numbers that we have in student engagement. The suspension rate is within the county rate and the state rate, but it's not something that we're proud of, and that's something that we're working on and developing strategies for those students. Students sometimes misbehave because they do not have a reason to be at that school. And the last thing I always tell the students, if I don't get a 4-day weekend, you're not getting a 4-day weekend. And it's what can we do to keep those students on our campus, working with Mr. Vasquez, working with AHA, working with all of the programs that we have at Carpinteria High School to support those students. Additional goals that we have is to increase professional development for all teachers to incorporate technology-based lessons across the departments, identify students in the 9th grade to provide interventions in conjunction with other courses, and develop support systems to support students experiencing disciplinary challenges. We just started a mental health matters club. We have a wellness club on our campus. We have AHA, we have Step Up. We just started a robotics club. They're going to compete this weekend in LA. And we continue to increase our dual enrollment courses. Our students are graduating at Carpenter High School. Some of them are enrolling at the UC colleges as sophomores or first semester juniors. Our A through G rates continue to go up. We're at 48%. And our college and career readiness numbers with the CT pathways, those will continue to rise as we can move forward into the years to come. Any questions?
Rogelio?
Yes, you mentioned that students haven't been tested during the 9th and 10th grade. Correct? And my question is, why not?
The state only tests students in the 11th grade.
Okay, and again, the biggest challenge, I would say, it's math, correct?
To me, it's so
To
now
raise it
it's,
to, what is it, 50%?
yes. Now it's not just necessarily math at the high school level. It's also English language arts because a lot of times the students may not necessarily need to know how to do the math. It's explain how did the math problem get solved. And that's something that is new for students. When they take that test and they're shown a bicycle moving at 10 miles an hour,
That would explain why.
not having to figure out why it's moving or how fast it's moving, it's asking them, can you explain how you would solve the problem? So if they are not proficient in the English language, they're not going to perform well. So it's no longer
Even if you get the right answer, you have to explain it.
correct.
Yes.
What if you do not know how to explain it?
That's the reason.
Don't
So it's
score
not
well.
only just the math, but it's also supporting the students.
You get it wrong.
Yes. Well, so the way the test is given, you're given a problem. If you don't solve the problem on the first step, they give you another problem similar to the one that you just got wrong, but they're asked of that problem in a different format, so that to see whether the first question was not worded correctly, it supports. But a lot of times, it's not the solution that they're looking for. They're looking to see whether the student understands how to solve the problem, and it's explaining it, writing out in a paragraph format on the computer, explaining this is how you would solve that math problem. So it's not just math that is happening and that's taking place in math, it's also language arts. So we can't just say it's math, it's also supporting the students using the language arts in the math classes. So when we say language arts, it's literacy across the curriculum, supporting students on how to write in math, in English, in social studies, and in science.
And this is also done at the middle school, correct?
Yes, I would assume yes.
Yeah, okay.
Actually, it starts in kindergarten.
Yeah.
Kindergarten, they're drawing pictures about how they're solving problems.
Well, yeah, it's
Yeah.
part of the Common Core, really. It's,
So when I say we need to develop tests in 9th and 10th grade, we cannot develop a test that mimics the state test because they're all computer-based, but it's using Admentum that we just purchased in developing a set of questions so that we can gauge sort of where our students are at that time in the 9th grade and in the 10th
So,
grade.
but you also mentioned that students are going to be tested, correct, during 9th and 10th grade.
It's developing that test that we have to develop because there is no test out there.
Because basically, you have no clue how the student is
Yep, correct.
doing in
And
math
there is no
or
test
science
out there that we can
until
say the test
the 11th
is,
grade, which
yes.
could be a big surprise.
So one of the things that we're doing is we're actually giving the students the practice test of the CASP in the 9th and then in the 10th grade. So that we're giving them a test that they're going to see in the 11th grade, but they may not have covered all the concepts, but it's sort of to gauge how much growth there is in the 9th and 10th. So by the time they get into the 11th grade and we give them that practice test in November, then we get an idea of how they're going to perform in May.
But basically, what would you say, Gerardo, the current grade point average at the high school?
The GPA?
Correct.
I don't know because their GPA is broken down, and our GPA is broken down into four different categories.
But the one,
The academic GPA,
the
we have
academic GPA, that's
the average is probably a 3.0.
3.0. That's good.
I mean, I'm just guessing, but I can give you that information. But the idea is to, for example, the DNF list that we got the first 6 weeks was the briefest report I have seen in years. It was like just 4 or 5 pages and that's throughout the grades, multiple students. And it used to be, before we started the extended learning, it used to be 20 to 30 or 40 pages of students getting D's and F's, but it's getting smaller and smaller as we go through the years. As actually, the beginning with the 9th graders is how can we teach them to use extended learning, which is 40 minutes every day, to get support from their math teacher, from their English teacher, or social studies teacher, if they didn't grasp the concept during their period that they had the math class.
All right. Thank you, Gerardo.
Jacqueline?
Yeah. So you, Sly, as you are, always answered all my questions that I had for the other principals. So
I've been watching.
I know,
them.
right? And I said I was
TiVo
going to
them.
ask every principal the same thing. But you had mentioned early on in the presentation about possible, if I heard it right, alternative class times like evening and late afternoon? Can you talk a little bit? That really excited me.
So one of the things that I've actually started the conversations with Santa Barbara City College Adult Education is we do credit recovery in our Step Up program. But at the same time, when we do that, a lot of our students that are in sports cannot do that, or they could be in muses or whatever activity that they do. So if they have a job after school, or that they may not be able to do the credit recovery, or even take a class that will get them ahead, is why not have those courses on our campus from 6 to 8 p.m., 2 days a week, or so forth. We already sometimes do that with our dual enrollment sections that we have at the high school. So, for example, if we've had anthropology where the teacher comes from City College and teaches the course with us, but they don't want to come every day. So what we'll do is we'll offer that class at a specific period, and it'll be double periods, so that the students can take that course, and then they have 2 days or 3 days a week that it becomes a study period working on that in that dual enrollment class. But my thing has always been is, why can't we have a flexible day, and it's thinking outside the box, which I like to do, is what can we do to develop a high school that if it was up to me, I would rather go to school in the evening than in the morning.
Yeah, my son would have also. That's
Yes.
why I like your
So it's
idea.
what can we do to develop a program where we have classes in the evening, supporting our students, not only just getting back on track, but also getting ahead. And why is it that we have to wait for summer school to provide the support for our students and try to cram a year or a semester in 6 weeks when we can have those same classes offered in the evening for our students with our staff, and providing them with some support as they move forward in the curriculum.
And so it sounds like with your new teachers coming on board, they're open to kind of that flexible schedule themselves.
And it's
right?
a lot of them don't, and it's sometimes they don't see the flexibility, especially, for example, if you have a young child that you couldn't do childcare in the morning, well, why not extend the day in the afternoon to offer those courses in the evening? And those are things that we have to work out. But to me, I find it very interesting when we have open house and back to school night, and I see all those classrooms lit up, and I'm thinking, why is it that we can't have those things lit up almost every day of the school year?
Yeah, really.
Do you know of a high school who is doing it, Gerardo?
There are some high schools down south that are doing it with conjunction with city colleges, that the city college actually takes over the campus in the evenings. But my thing is, why do we have to let them take over? Why can't we bring them along and have our own teachers also teach those courses?
So I'll go ahead and just ask you the money question. So what are some budget considerations you want us to keep in mind for next year?
I think a lot of the support systems that we currently have are very important. AHA, the STAR therapists, the mental health issues. Those are things that we need to keep on in order to support our students. At the same time is supporting our teachers to want to teach new courses that are challenging, that are engaging, and that are in the forefront of teaching, of classes. It's trying to teach outside the box. So right now, for example, this is the first year we have our team, technology, entertainment, art, and media, and it's a 9th grade class. We have about 32 students in that class, and we have 2 teachers teaching that class. And they're finding it to be a very rewarding experience. A teacher is very good, perhaps, in ceramics, and the other teacher could be great in the technology component, and they're working together with this group of students. It's why can't we do those type of things with the other programs? Why is it that we have to have an English class or a math class that meets for the whole year? Why can't we break up that math class and give a student be in a math class and a science class, and they get 50% of the units each semester, and it becomes a year-long course with either getting a science or a math credit as they move on. And it's working with the UC system to make them eligible for A through G, but those are the things that the UC system is looking as we move into integrated science, as we move integrated math. Having siloed classes are no longer something that we're looking at.
Maureen?
Yeah, I was just wondering about the goal. How is the 60% goal for English language arts? Is that correct? Getting everyone to 60%? Is that correct?
I don't see a problem.
No. What I'm asking is, if everyone's already at 58%, that seems like a really low goal.
So the 60% is the district goal.
Okay.
So to me, it's great to be at 60%, but there's no reason why we cannot be at 100%. So I'm meeting the district goal, but
Okay.
for me, it's not the goal that I want to be at. I don't think anybody wants to say, "Ooh, we reached 60%, way to go." Now we worry. Who worries about the 40% over there? It's trying to figure out. It's not just 60%. It's increasing that number as we move forward.
So, would it be beneficial at all to try and identify a higher number? Just, like here's the district goal, but ideally we're pushing for 65 or something like that. Do you have a goal in mind that you'd like to?
I would like to be in the next 2 years at 70%.
Okay.
And it's an achievable goal,
Yeah.
especially with the support systems from my perspectives. As we move forward in using more technology and supporting our students, I think 70% is a very reachable goal for us.
Okay.
And you can remind me in 2 years.
Okay. I will. Good.
going
Good.
to.
Yeah. In terms of tutoring, and just in general, I want to say congratulations on all your programs and the good work you're doing. But I also had a thought about tutoring. And are there any peer-to-peer tutoring opportunities in math and English language arts?
So we have, in our AVID classes, we have our AP students that are tutors in those classes. In the after-school program, we have Westmont that brings about 8 or 9 college students to support our students. We have the tutors from the Step Up, and then we have CalSoap tutors that are college students. During the daytime, it's very difficult for us to get the students to support other students, because we're also, one of the things that has changed over the years from the time when you and I went to high school, TAs are not something that we can assign to anymore. It has to be driven by the student saying, I want to be a TA, and it has to be signed by the parent, and we are trying to reduce the number of students that are TAs. So a student like the tutors in the AVID classes, we had to create a class that is A through G, because they also want to support their opportunities when they write those essays and they submit those transcripts to the UC system. They don't want to just see TA or tutor, they want to see AVID tutor. Those give those students extra points when they apply for the UC system. That's the reason we have the MESA program. But it's amazing how much in the extended learning class, how much support there is between the students in that class. Extended learning happens 4 days a week, and you are assigned to a teacher that you have during the daytime. If you're struggling in math, either the teacher will ask you to come in to get support, or you can check yourself out and go get help from that teacher. So we have built in a total of 40 minutes every day for that support system in our school day. That now has been mimicked in other area high schools, but it's something that we continuously try to evaluate the effectiveness, because we also don't want to have a program that is just wasting 40 minutes a day.
Right.
Because that could be used in instruction. So it is supporting our students in every grade level. It is supporting our students in every class. So if, for example, tomorrow, if Ms. Unruh wants her music students to come in for an extra 40 minutes prior to the performance, she can ask those students, I need for you to get a extended learning pass. I need for you to come in for an extra 40 minutes today. And that is a flexibility that we have in our master schedule that we didn't have 5 years ago. And the teachers agreed to that every year, that extended learning.
Yeah, it sounds like. Excuse me, I keep doing that. Sorry. So that sounds like a system that's working out for you guys. So that's great.
And sorry to interrupt you. And through WASC, we're in the WASC process.
Yes.
You will all get a very special invitation for March 11th. So you want to mark that. It's a Sunday. We are also analyzing our programs, analyzing interventions, figuring out what do we need to do, what are our areas of growth and our areas of strength for our report. And those are we just had a staff meeting today in the afternoon, identifying the action plans for what we've identified our areas of need.
And then the newsletter, I'm very interested in that. I remember when the newspaper closed, and I actually lobbied while in high school to get it back going again.
That's
so
correct.
I'm assuming that's going to be edited and written by the students themselves?
So it's going to be edited and written by not only the students, but by the teachers also.
Okay.
Because for example, we have a work-based a counselor, so she would be in charge of bringing in all the articles for the CT section, but it will be in electronic format, so you'll be getting an email on that.
And that's an opportunity too, to possibly try and do a dual. City College has journalism courses, so that would actually be a great dual enrollment journalism course
Correct.
possibility. That leads me to my next question, which is, how are the dual enrollment courses funded?
The dual enrollment courses are our own courses with teachers that meet the minimum qualifications. So if I have an English teacher and she's got a master's degree in English, and they were going to teach 12th grade English, I can go to City College and say I have a teacher who can teach college level English, and I would take the 12th grade students that would have been in her class anyways, and they would be in that class. So it's not adding any sections. We're basically using the sections that we have as dual enrollment classes.
Right.
If there's a teacher that, for example, if we want to have tomorrow Chinese, we don't have a staff member that can teach Chinese. So the City College will send the teacher to our campus, and they will pay for it.
So City College pays if it's a course that we don't have, or that the CARP district doesn't have a person, even if it's only like 2 students?
No, they have to have a minimum of 15.
15 students, okay.
20.
Yeah,
Sorry.
because I know with the journalism, nobody has masters in journalism. So if somebody on your staff had a master's in English and a little bit of journalism experience, they would probably qualify to teach.
Yeah, we would. What we
journalism
normally do is
course.
we identify the teacher, we identify the course, and then we meet with the department chair at Santa Barbara City College.
Yeah.
And it's a meet and greet. Do you like me? Yes, I like you too.
Yeah.
And I think that's how it goes. And it's
Yeah.
sometimes they will approve it, and sometimes they won't. Sometimes the department chair may say, we're not willing to approve it at this time, but come back next year. There are certain classes and certain departments that are not don't welcome the dual enrollment opportunities, but others are very open. So it's trying to work with City College, developing that relationship that we've been able to develop over the last 15 years, and they are a very good partner for us. And it's trying to identify the needs from our students and the needs that we can provide them with our own staff. That's the first thing I try to do. What do I have in my staff? Who do I have in my staff that can teach that course? How do we get the minimum qualifications? I'm going to give you an example of Mr. Bison. Mr. Bison is our social studies teacher. He wanted to teach U.S. history. He didn't have a master's degree. Guess what? He went and got a master's degree. Once he got the master's degree, then City College said, you're in. Then he wanted to teach a political science class. Well, you don't have a master's in political science. He went and took some classes at City College with those professors, and then they said, yeah, you can now teach political science. We wanted to have him teach linguistics. Well, he went to the University of Santa Barbara and took linguistics classes. So sometimes the teachers are the ones that are trying to bring those courses to our high school.
Yeah, that makes sense. The last thing I wanted to say, and it kind of applies to both schools, the middle school and the high school, which is just, and maybe it sounds kind of ridiculous, but it kind of piggybacks, I think, on what Andy was saying a little bit, which is, I would like to see an increased culture of recognition and awareness for carpentry as scholars and high achieving academic students. Like in the newspaper every week, there's a whole page of sports news. Are we sending out press releases really championing our scholars and finding opportunities, and then on the flip side, mentoring them? So having a speaker to do kind of like a TED Talk in math and science and also in English, having published writers. We have published writers in our community who would be willing to donate their time to do that. So I think really, and also having people that represent our student body, so Latino and Latina writers and scholars and mathematicians and scientists. I think that's the way we build excitement around the academic side, but also really promote those people within, like every time I drive past the high school, there's somebody's house has all those football helmets of students. And I just keep thinking, like, I was never a football player, but I would have liked to have seen, something that represented me, like a pencil or something sticking in someone's front yard. And I know, like, again, like, I know that Carpentry is proud of those students. We're proud of all our students, but we just don't have a vehicle and a way to promote them right now because there's just not that infrastructure set up. So I think as leaders, we have to create opportunities to really promote our high achieving students too. Yeah.
And I agree. And I agree with you, and I think it's something that we need to work on. And it's something that I always think of, how can we support the students that perform well, and how can we encourage them to not want to give up. A lot of times there's that peer pressure of not wanting not to be good. You're not going to do well in math, or you shouldn't do well in science. Is how can we develop that culture for our female students and our male students to do well in whatever they want to do.
Yeah.
That is one of the reasons, going back to what you mentioned earlier about the economic diversity in the class. That's the reason we took the barriers in our AP classes. If you want to take an AP class, go for it. We're not going to tell you you're not going to do well. It's up to you. But we're always going to provide you an exit opportunity. So when we offer a U.S. history class, we will offer an AP U.S. history. So if you're at this 12 weeks or the semester you're not doing well, we will be more than happy to move you back to a regular U.S. history class. And the scores have gone up. They haven't gone down over the years. And that was a real apprehension of sometimes from the beginning from teachers saying, how are we going to open this to everybody? But it actually enriches the opportunities in those debates, especially in those history classes and political science classes, because you bring all those different perspectives.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I'd like to see it. Sorry, I'd like to see a goal of, and I think you already attained it, but because we never say we want to get our students who have exceeded the standard. It's always met or exceeded. And I think it'd be really good to set a goal. We want 30% of our students to exceed the standard in English, and 25% or 20% to exceed it in I think that would basically be addressing the high achieving students that tend to get neglected otherwise. And then I touched on it with Ron earlier, but what are we doing to coordinate? I know the math has started a couple of years ago to coordinate with middle school, the curriculum, so we had a kind of a continuity. But what are we doing in English, in particular with writing, so where the students at the middle school are getting, their expectations are realistic when they get to the high school, or at least their skill set is matching up with that at the high school.
Well, a couple of things. One is ultimately we want the middle school to also give my perspectives an opportunity in the 6th and 7th and 8th grade, so that we have a curriculum that is cohesive across the grade levels. But also one of the things that with the support of our superintendent, we're going to develop a curriculum council or committee where we can have since I'm in charge of secondary curriculum, bringing in our language arts, our core subjects in each of the middle school and the high school, so that they can begin to discuss what are you offering. I found very interesting the Science Matters presentation, just by sitting with the middle school teachers and asking them what are you doing and how, and having them listen to what we're doing, and how we all want to be on the same page, but sometimes we don't have the time or we don't have the tools to be on the same page. And by developing the curriculum committee, which we haven't had I don't think we've ever had one, is when that committee meets, is figuring out what are you using in your classes. I don't think we even know I don't even know what the middle school is using for science in textbooks or curriculum. It's working together so that at least the high school and the middle school have an idea of what each one of us is doing, and then figuring out what do we expect our students at the 9th, 10th, and 11th grade to accomplish. And I think if the teachers at the middle school and the teachers from the elementary know what is expected in the next grade level, I think there will be an awesome system that we would be able to have here at Carpentry.
Sure. Yeah. I think that right now I think there's a disconnection.
And that's what we're trying to.
And I think you see it with your at least the writing skills and interpretive skills, literary skills with the incoming freshmen and even sophomores, and then when they start getting to those higher level English, honors classes, AP classes, I've got to hand it to your AP teachers and honors teachers, they're not lowering their standard to meet the level of the student. They're kind of pushing those students to bring their standard up. So I think that's commendable, because the easy thing for them to do would be to, okay, I'm going to lower my standard.
And if you lower the standards, the students will lower their standards.
Well, they
and
will,
they'll-
exactly. But I know it's hard because they're you don't get that connectedness to the student right away. But I think it pays off in the long run because you can actually see tangible learning taking place.
One of the
and
things that we
improvement.
did for the first time this year is we actually gave a placement test for math at the middle school.
Yeah.
So we now use the placement test, the teacher recommendation, the test, the CASP results, and also their grades. We use 3 of those criterias to place the student into the proper math class. We're also going to be doing that with science, and we're also going to be doing that with English. We do it with Spanish also.
Yeah.
So-
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Mark your
Thank you,
calendars,
Eduardo.
March 11th.
Much less.
Good
Thanks.
job, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to, thanks, Ron.
Good job.
Move on to item D5, budget update. Maureen.
Well, this certainly isn't as exciting as the last 2 presentations. But as we mentioned,
You've
we're
got
going
2
to.
minutes as well.
I 2 minutes. Start now. We're going to be bringing, like we mentioned, budget updates to the board each month. We're kind of at the end of our calendar year, so you're going to get one in 2 weeks, which isn't like a month away, for our first interim, and it will mimic this almost identically. So what you're going to see is side by side the budget version you saw at the last meeting on October 24th, and the current revision with the change column. And if you go down to the arrow 2/3 down the page, it says net change to fund balance has not changed. So you'll see between categories there's been movement because we do budget transfers as spending priorities change throughout the year. We move monies into different categories to make sure that our budget line items are aligned to the spending line items. The second slide will be the same thing. It's the budget, revised budget compared to the last time you've seen the budget in October, but it also adds actuals through the prior month, which is October 31st. This will be the first interim you'll see at the next board meeting for your action. However, you'll see this in every budget update from now on. It'll be the current budget and the prior year actuals. And then you'll see a column that shows how it's tracking as a percentage of budget. So actuals to October as a percentage of the total budget. And you'll see by major category that we are not very good on the revenue side, just under 10%, because recall we're property tax funded. Taxes are collected in December and April. We don't get paid those taxes until December and April, and then a final payment in early July for our final June payment. So that's never going to track like you would see monthly expenditures. On the expenditure side, you can see we're at about 25%, which is about where we should be in October. Tight. So there's not a lot of surplus built into this budget. I want to show you down at the third arrow where it says revenues received minus the expenditures paid. That's a negative number, meaning we're paying out more money than the revenues we're receiving. And that's where cash in the bank is important and fund balance is important, because that fund balance may not all be cash. Some of it may be a receivable. But that helps this cash position on the interim, as well as early towards the end of last calendar year, school year, we passed a TRAN, which is a temporary note to help us with cash flow for $5 million, which is almost twice what we normally do. And you can see now why we need that cash flow mechanism. This is all very typical. just an explanation. I explained we do budget transfers that help keep our budget and spending aligned to priorities. And then the last two are the multi-year without reductions. This hasn't changed. We didn't change our fund balance, anything to the bottom line. And then, and you can see we still have a problem the third year out. And as we presented last month, what it would look like with reductions of $333,000 to show at least 3% out in the next 2 and 3 years in our forecast. So, questions? I think that was my 2 minutes.
Outstanding. Do we have any questions?
Yeah, just I'm looking at page 3. Just because we're going to be looking at these over and over again, I want to get kind of clear. So under revenues for state aid, sorry, I'll wait till you get there.
Okay, state aid.
So state aid, 23 million, is that correct?
That includes property taxes.
Okay. Why is it categorized as state aid?
It's an object category that the state identifies. Property taxes through LCFF are part of state aid, and if you are a basic aid funded district, that just means your property taxes exceed your state aid, but it's all in the same category. What I can certainly do, and I will, is change that to say state aid / property taxes.
Okay, because
There's about $1.2 million that we get from the state. The
yeah,
rest,
or maybe just break those out. Can you break them out, or you know what I mean?
if it's important to you.
I mean, it's interesting to me. It's helpful to me.
The detail that we have, this is a summary.
Mm-hmm.
So in all of the other detail, it is broken out. If you'd like it broken out,
Well, that's why I just got confused because I
I
knew
can
we
change
weren't
the
a state
descriptor.
funded. Okay, and then that's why I wanted to know for local revenues. That's obviously not property tax. So what does that refer to?
Those are donations. Those are our rental income. Those are partnerships that we have with SBCEO where there's money coming in and then we flow it back out. So those are all of the monies that don't come from federal or state governments.
Okay, and then on the budget variance B through A, that third column over.
Mm-hmm.
So where we have the obviously the different expenditures there, is there a reason why that's not totaled out? Some like beneath it, there's no total of or.
It is. It's a zero total.
Okay.
It
So you pulled the money from
different categories. So as let's say a site is deciding to, they had originally budgeted so much for professional learning. Mm-hmm. And that priority has changed, and now they're going to buy more workbooks for classroom. Mm-hmm. I have to pull it out of one category and then put it into that category. That's all this does.
And then those decisions in terms of like pulling what from where, how much of the board has, how much of that are we seeing? Like, are these changes reflected in like budget things that we've passed? Or
you're seeing it right now, and you would see those typically at all of the interim budgets, which is required.
Maureen, remember when Maureen gave us the that very comprehensive notebook, kind of going over the budget and everything?
Yeah. But
she covered an awful lot of this stuff.
Oh yeah, no. I'm just asking the questions because I still am wondering about them, not just to waste everyone's time.
All right.
Yeah. So, and obviously because things come up in an ad hoc kind of way, and then these decisions are having to be made. So I'm just trying to understand how, $17,000 is transferred out of certificated salaries or et cetera. Do you see what I'm saying?
So these are not positions.
Right.
These are all time card work, things that were estimated to be used budgeted that didn't get used in that category. Priorities have changed, and so we realign budgets regularly. Mm-hmm. Transfers happen daily, and they typically come to the board when the interims are presented as budget changes. Mm-hmm. So you're seeing these monthly now as we do the monthly updates. You'll see this almost every month. Some will net zero, meaning they're just shifting within their own within allocation, and it's not affecting the bottom line. And you will see sometimes changes that do affect the bottom line because there's no money to take from. This has to be something that we've actually had to add as an expense.
So we make the decisions, the leadership team. That's what you're asking. Who is making the decisions regarding the expenditures? And the leadership team is making that decision.
Who and how, and I think the whole point of having a monthly budget update is to better understand the budget so that going forward, you have a better sense of, maybe we didn't budget enough here in this, to understand and to learn in order to have things work better in the future. So if I'm just seeing numbers changing, but I'm not having an understanding of why or how that change is being made, it doesn't help me make a better choice as a board member as to where problems happened and how we can improve things in the future. I think this update is a great opportunity to say, not only are here the numbers, but here's some information that will help us moving forward to make a better choice for next year.
I see it as just information because the bottom line isn't changing.
Correct.
We approved the overall budget, and it's staff's kind of decision to adjust.
Yes.
What I would not like to see is if we're totally outside our budget, but you've shown that we're still within our original budget. So.
Well, and I still feel and always feel that our choices around money and budgets reflect our priorities. And so there are thought processes happening that we are not necessarily privy to by just looking at the numbers. So what I'm trying to say is I would value the thought process as a way of understanding how to improve and change, and because we are going to be asked to make budget cuts.
Yeah, but that's not our
Right.
that's not our purview. What you're saying.
Not voting on it, right? Not having the decisions will have already have been made.
We've already set priorities and policies that are reflected in the way staff adjust the budget.
So to help you, this will inform us with developing the budget for 18-19. And that's where we'll have those discussions exactly to help you understand what our new priorities are. And we'll use this information to base the new budget on during our discussion. So that's where that information will be most helpful. So we're making decisions now within the categories. That's informing us as we move forward in our budget discussion that we're going to have, or discussions in January, February, March, as we develop the new budget. This information informs us about the new budget.
And what I'm trying to say is, just giving us a spreadsheet with numbers and no information is not particularly useful necessarily in terms of it being an update. It's just sort of for us, we're just okay, check. But the whole point of an update is to gather information in order to better understand the process so that you can do an even better job moving forward. Otherwise, why not just wait until December and show us all the numbers then, right? I mean, what's the point of having an update if we're not given any of the information that is clearly being reflected here?
So I understand your point, but if you look at these numbers, it's like if we have a budget of $25,000 and we're looking at $17, $4, $5 worth of expenses. That's in comparison to our budget, that's how much these numbers reflect. So while it may look like $17,000, but in comparison to our overall budget, these are just very small amount. And if staff have to come to the board and explain every $10, $20 that we spend, we would be in budget study session every other day.
Well, staff wouldn't get anything done
Right.
because they could never make decisions,
So
which
these
is what we hire them
these
for.
variants, the fact that first of all they come out to zero sum, right? So nothing really has changed. But the variance in comparison, like I said, it would be like us being responsible for $25,000 and looking at items that, what did you spend $17 on? What did you spend $4 on? It's that equivalent.
So you would feel like would you want the information if it were millions of dollars being transferred between accounts? You would want to know.
Yeah.
You would want to know. Okay, why was this being transferred? So do you see what I'm saying? like for you, it matters how much the money is, but for me, what matters is I'm like, I don't want people wasting time on small amounts, but what I'm saying is I'm trying to understand the budget in a longer process than just, you know, a 1 day or 2 day study session. You know, having a monthly update gives us all the opportunity to understand even more the behind the scenes decisions are being made, not as a way of influencing those decisions or even changing them at all because they've already been made, but just as a way of understanding how the process works and giving us a red flag, like, hey, heads up, our special ed costs are going up and up and up. Chances are we're going to have to increase this area next year. That's nice to know in October because it preps you for that information later on.
Okay.
So anyways, yeah, so I think for me, just in general, it's great to have the numbers, and I would personally like to see just a little bit more information as to what the numbers are telling us, and maybe a little more explanation of any helpful information that you've gleaned from these numbers that would give us a better sense of where things are headed or where things are going.
Well, I think the numbers tonight are telling us that we're on track, and yet we still have a $333,000 budget gap. That's what we wanted you to know. We want you to know that we're on track with what we've told you in October. We're telling you the same information in November, which is good news that it's not significantly changed since October. We're on track for that. But what we're really trying to identify for everybody and highlighting is that we are going to have to make some tough decisions in the next few months. That's what we're reinforcing tonight. That $333,000 budget gap is something that we are going to have some challenging discussions, because that's when we are going to be identifying priorities. And so that's just what we wanted to reinforce tonight, is to make sure everyone is aware of what our challenges are moving forward. And in the context of the information I shared earlier during the superintendent's report, that the pension costs continue to rise.
As do healthcare.
And healthcare, and then we also will be engaging in collective bargaining. So we need to keep that all in mind. That's our context as we move into the budget conversation.
So, I think the part that's a little confusing to me is I see, granted, I think I agree that these are not huge numbers, but it's confusing to me to see that money can be shifted around within categories if that, somehow that decision can be made. Oh, well, this is a priority. Someone is deciding this is a priority. Let's find $36,000 for it or whatever.
Well,
and yet we're supposed to tell our teachers, no, there's no money in any categories for any of you, and we have to cut $333,000. To me, that's a confusing thing. And without the explanation of how we were able to find some wiggle room within certain categories, and yet, do you see what I'm saying?
I don't.
No, because
Okay.
we have a fixed amount of money we were working with, and if we don't have that amount of money at the end of the year, we can't pay our bills, we can't meet our budget obligations with the state, and at that point it doesn't really matter because none of us are going to be here. So it's really important. If we don't meet a 3% reserve 3 years out, doesn't matter. We're all gone.
Well,
And so that's our primary objective. Our primary role is not to micromanage the little figures in each budget. It's to ensure that the bottom line satisfies the goal set forth by the state. That's really our only job.
Right, but how you get from that from
but
A to Z
you're convoluting two things, Maureen. You're saying that adjustments within a fund are the same as saying we can't pay you any more money next year because we don't have the money. We have to make
that's apples and oranges. I feel like
that's what you're trying to do.
No. I'm saying those are two different things. What I'm saying is, on one hand, we're telling the public we've looked under every rock. There's only this amount. It's in this fund. It's labeled. It's X, Y, and Z. This is all we have to pay for this particular thing. Like, for instance, under benefits.
No, see, you're convoluting things. I think it's really important that you have a grasp of the budget before you start.
So are you saying that I don't have a grasp of the budget, Andy?
it doesn't
Because it
appear-
kind of sounds like you're talking down to me a little bit, and I don't appreciate
I'm not talking
it.
down to you. I'm just saying it's important that we understand how the budget's put forth before we start getting into the weeds. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, so you can do that the way you feel best, and I'll do that the way I feel best, and all I can do on the board is ask questions and vote on the things that are in front of me. And I'm not going to tell you how to do that. I'm not going to tell anyone on this board how to do that. You can ask the questions about the things that are useful to you and vote on the things the way you want to vote on them. And I'm going to continue to ask questions about the things that feel important to me
Okay, that's
and,
great,
and
but
vote
it's
on the things that are on the agenda that are here.
But
and
I
that's
think
it.
it's really important that you.
And I don't need to be lectured or
I'm
talked down
not lecturing,
to.
but
Thank you.
I'm just telling you that our only our only job here is to make sure that we have more than 3% 3 years ago.
Actually, we have a lot of, as a board member, we are responsible for all fiscal and policy decisions that come before us. Fiscal and policy.
Agreed, but
That's
but
it.
if we can't make our fiscal obligations, then the policy obligations don't matter. That's the bottom line.
Well, the way I see it, by the year 2019, 2020, we will not be here. Reserves 1.3%.
But yeah, but look at the next page.
Look at the next
Look at the next
Well,
page.
All I'm seeing like this.
No, look at the
Turn
next
the
page.
No, the
That's
next
all,
page.
this is all I need to see.
Turn the
No.
next page.
You
Well,
can't stop. There's
You can't
reserve
stop.
balance.
No,
That's what it says.
Turn the next page, though.
I mean,
Helio, right here. This is what we're aiming for.
And this is how we're going to do it, is you cut the $333,000 for next year, and we will be at over 3%.
We'll be
And,
solvent.
and I don't
And
think,
that-
This is if we don't do our job.
Okay.
This is if we don't do our job, we will not be here. But if we do our job, we will get here.
well, and then
The
the,
board.
probably the job is to get rid of salaries or whatever.
Those are the hard decisions
Exactly.
that leaders
So
need to make.
otherwise, we're still here, which is like that. If we don't do it, we're going to be here.
so,
Okay, so
Scott, go ahead, Roger.
But the way I see it is that you take away $1 here, but then you give away 2 over here.
No, see,
No,
see,
we're not saying
It's
that.
been a whole year.
No,
since I've
that's
seen it.
that's.
I mean,
that's it.
December 13.
That isn't what's happening.
We argue on this on December 13 of 2016.
No.
A whole year later, it's the same thing.
Okay.
And
well,
I think my point being, part of why I ran for office and part of why I'm here is because of process. And process is really important to me. And process isn't just trusting what's in front of you for the sake of patting yourself on the back and feeling like you've had a good day. Process involves making tough choices, asking tough questions, getting people involved, and allowing the community to see the process of the minds at work. And so a lot of times, if I just get a spreadsheet, show this to someone on campus tomorrow, take this to campus, and ask a parent to look at a page and say, tell me what this means about budgets for next year.
you could show them the budget with
So
every breakdown
without
in the
being
world for you, and
interrupted,
they're not
without being
gonna
interrupted,
understand
without being interrupted, my task is to understand why the choices are being made behind finances so that I can explain them to the people who elected me and to the people of Carpinteria and say, this is why $333,000 are going to have to be cut, and this is why those things are being cut, and those choices are best for our students and for student achievement, because ultimately, regardless of any fiscal finances, we are here because we believe in the student achievement and success of Carpinteria students, and I hope that that is foremost in everybody's mind.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks, Maureen. So we'll move on to no public comment. So we'll move on to business operations, facilities, and warrants. We're being asked to approve the warrants for the period of November 4th through the 20th of 2017 in the amount of $599,574.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, item C6 is contract with Guy Smithson Painting and Decorating for the Baylor property, contract is not to exceed $1,326 paid for from general funds. Can I get a motion?
I move to approve.
Second.
Maureen?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask about this. I asked some questions to Diana beforehand and got an email back, but just kind of wanted to have it for the record. It said on the invoice that we got given for that it was going to be for touch-up work, and yet it said that was going to take 24 hours.
Yes.
That's
Has anyone else-
$50 an hour, right?
$50 an hour.
Right,
For
you
touch-up
understand.
work.
You understand that in any school district projects, we are required to pay prevailing wage. So this is very typical.
Which is governed under the Davis-Bacon laws.
Yes, it's ed code and it's state regulations. So that's why you look at that and you say, wow. But that's the response, is that when you have any school district property, you have to pay prevailing wage.
And I just feel like there's a lot of projects just in the short time that I've been here that have come before, passed before us that have had to do with the Baylor project.
Mm-hmm.
And now I believe there's some lease agreements with the farm coming up. And I just feel like there needs to be a more comprehensive look. I think we've said this
Yes.
before. So that's going to be, would anyone else like to see?
We talked
Well,
about
yes,
that
remember.
last meeting.
Yeah, last meeting in my report.
Okay.
I indicated that.
In January, right?
Pardon me?
We'll have that discussion in January.
No, excuse me, my report last month, I reported that I'm currently working with our legal counsel, Craig Price, and we're doing research around the options for Baylor property. And then in January or February, we'll be able to present to you some options that will be in-depth conversation about the property.
Yeah, I mean, as part of that, I would like to see kind of a maintenance budget, an annual maintenance budget, that kind of a cost-benefit analysis of, the costs associated with this project, along with the revenues that we get as related to this, and especially has to do with like a maintenance budget for it. Like
I'm
how
sure
much-
that'll be part of the conversation.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
As I just feel like if this is like a tenant moving out and it's taking $1,200 just to paint, it seems like a lot of money to me for what it seems to be requiring.
That's what happens with prevailing wage.
Not the wage necessarily, but taking 24 hours worth of painting work to do touch-up painting between tenants. That seems extraordinary.
Not my expertise.
Right.
Not my expertise.
I don't know that that's what it's for.
That's what it said on the
Taping,
invoice,
bit of
touch-up
tape,
painting.
Touch-up.
Tape.
Internet touch-up.
But I don't necessarily know that do we know that it's between tenants? I mean, is that what it's for?
That's
Yes, the
what
tenants moved out, and then before we have new tenants in, there's a lot of painting that needs to be done.
Yeah.
That's more than I've ever seen done for the. Maybe that reflects where I've moved into. But anyways, whoops, excuse me.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, item C7 is,
You didn't ask if there was anyone opposed.
are you opposed?
Nay.
Okay, sorry. She opposed the contract.
C7.
C7 is the third amendment to master joint use lease with Hutton Foundation.
I move to approve the third amendment.
Second.
Yeah, I just brought this up because I know we've talked about this before, but I just kind of wanted to get it on the record. What is, can you just give us a little bit more background on this?
Sure.
Diana?
This is regarding the main school, and Hutton Parker is the foundation that we have been involved in agreements for the past couple years for the different nonprofits that are renting the main school property, which the Carpinteria Children's Project is one of those renters. So the Hutton Foundation collects the rent and then passes that on to us. And that's our lease agreement. And this is the third one. And this lease agreement for this year is the same as last year.
So it sounds like it's just the Hutton is there as sort of a middleman.
Yes.
To act as the
They're the
funding partner.
They're property managers.
Oh, they're property
Yes,
managers.
until
Okay.
the end of this school year.
Okay.
Yes.
And then they're no longer acting on that
Well,
behalf
we're
for us?
having discussions about who really should be the property manager.
Okay, okay. So this is, can you just explain like why we're having to pass this now, or what's?
Because we have, in the past, we've made amendments to the amount of money we're collecting. And last year, there was a change from the year before. And this third amendment just reflects the amount of money that we're collecting again this year that we collected last year. It's the same amendment, but it's an amendment to the first lease.
Okay.
The first lease set up conditions, and this is the third different amendment for those conditions.
And I can talk a little bit about that first,
Sure.
Lise. So when Maine closed, there was a projected number of how much it really cost to run that facility. That included utilities, maintenance, landscaping, water, all of that. So that number was determined. Then the Hutton Parker Foundation leased that from the district to use the property. And there was a bidding process. There was like Waldorf School who bid for it. I think Howard. And
County.
County.
City College.
City College. Lots of people bid for it. But it was granted to the Hutton Parker as a nonprofit hub. And so then they worked directly with the nonprofits to charge the rent based on, the square footage and number of clients being served and all that. So that remained in their hands. And so that's currently what's happening. So we don't set the rent for those occupants. Hutton Parker does. And when CCP was under the district, that rent was kind of set by us because it was our district program. But now CCP is not part of the district. They're their own nonprofit. So this is probably within that
Yes.
amendment of how Hutton Parker is going to be working on that. So am I correct?
Yes,
on that?
you are.
Okay.
So
That's what makes a change.
does it still result in so it's a $35,000 loss of revenue for the district, is that correct?
No, it is more than that. I think.
I don't know where
A
that
loss
came
in
from.
revenue?
No, it's the same as last year. It's the same amount.
Yeah, there's
So-
no there's no loss
There's
in
no
revenue.
loss.
Okay,
Revenue.
then what is the amendment?
I think
Sorry,
it
I
was
should have it in front of
reduced,
me.
right? I think that the rent was reduced.
When CCP spinned off, and we were all part of that, right?
Right, you
Yes.
agreed not to collect any
Yeah,
rent from
we
them.
agreed for their first
So it was reduced last year.
as our contribution of the district to waive that rent amount.
So we've already
Which-
passed,
which-
we've already passed
Yes.
something
That
to
last
waive the amount.
Yeah,
So,
but that really isn't a reduction because that money was being paid out. It's just what it is it's on paper, but so instead of collecting 100 and whatever it was, $6,000 or $7,000, we're collecting $77,000,
think,
but we're
yeah.
not paying them that $36,000 or $30,000 for rent for the programs that are ours. So
Yeah.
there's really no loss in revenue, and I think that's a bit. I'm glad you brought that up, Maureen, because that's a number of other people have said it's a loss, and it's not. It's just a differential in accounting.
It says the annual base rent is reduced to 77,260,
Exactly.
which will be paid on equal monthly installments.
Exactly.
That's not the loss, that's how
Correct.
much they're paying.
and was that approved before before our budget was approved?
This was during the last budget
This is a-
discussion.
We all
Yes.
approved
But it's
it.
a but it's a
Right.
net zero. There's zero effect to our budget because it rather than us collecting the $100 and whatever it was $30,000 more than this, and then paying $30,000 out, we're just not charging them that $30,000.
Right.
That's the difference.
Okay, I'm not 100% clear, but I,
July 1st, 2017 to June 30, 2018.
Mm-hmm.
That's a contract.
Yes,
To the end of the school year.
Correct.
yes.
so I'm still sort of confused. So it's this nonprofit entity is in charge of collecting rent on all the nonprofit entities that are in the main school building. And they were going to collect 100 and something thousand, but now they're only going to collect
So
77,000.
the way it
77,000.
works with Hutton Parker is Hutton Parker just pays us. They pay us the value of the property. And then they grant to the nonprofits a subsidy, basically, to reduce their rent or whatever. So if anyone's really having a loss, it's Hutton Parker, because they're reducing the rent on their end, but they're still paying us the 120,000 or whatever it is.
Well,
Or what-
but
yeah.
in this case, they're
It's
not
77,
paying,
right?
But they're not paying us that, but they're not charging us the rent that we were paying before.
Yeah, I think this would have been clarified with a simple spreadsheet. Do you know what I mean? Of like Hutton Parker revenues going out, revenues, and then we could have just seen, oh, it's cost neutral here. But
It's cost neutral.
Right. I'm hearing that, but there's no way I could have gotten that information from the information that was given to me in this agenda. So I can
Correct.
understand why people got confused if they were, because it's taken me now 10 minutes to try and understand that it's basically just an accounting,
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
I don't know what you want to call it, an accounting
It's
change.
It's
Problem.
just accounting. It's
accounting.
it's just rather than passing through, collecting it and then putting it out again, we're just not collecting that additional money. We're not paying anything else. It's our contribution to the.
Is there a way that an like addendum could be added to this that just showed a spreadsheet of that, just to really clarify to people, look, we're not giving this money away, but we're just, it's
I
just a
can-
cost zero kind of
I
thing?
will be
That's
happy
the
to produce you
impression.
the information and share it with you.
Just
I'll share it with
just
you.
in a really
Money.
simple chart.
No, actually, it's not the impression.
That's not the impression.
Not the impression.
I
Not at all.
don't know how you got that impression.
Yes.
That we were giving away money.
No, I've not.
I
I
don't-
don't
I don't-
understand that.
I can understand why you're confused, because it's not based on without the background knowledge of how this worked, how would you possibly understand that? It's a bit of a convoluted system, and I'm not saying that's bad or good. It's not very intuitive the way this is set up.
Well, it's a simple thing. Hutton Parker collected $130,000, of which we paid
107.6.
100, whatever it was, which we were paying part of it. Now they're saying we're only going to collect 77, and the district is not paying anything. So there's no law there. This district total is
No,
zero.
I understand now, Diana,
Yes.
but I'm just saying that based on this information, I wouldn't have understood that.
I see. Okay. Well, we'll give more background
Yeah,
information. For
I think
that.
just for me, like a spreadsheet, like a visual spreadsheet of like, this is the cost before, this is how it worked before, this is how it's working now. You can see that it's still resulting in the same end
I'll
result.
work
Correct.
with you
The
on doing
history
a
of it.
history
Actually, the
of it.
history of it.
Yeah,
Sure.
I'll work with you on
Sure.
that.
But you understand that we can't be expected to go through the history of everything that comes before us.
A spreadsheet
Yeah,
would have
spreadsheet,
taken
but no,
would have
Rogelio's
taken 5
asking for the
minutes.
history. But yeah, I
Well,
that's fine.
If you look at different,
It's close. I mean,
I'm happy
Yeah.
to
Okay,
meet
we'll do
with
it.
you for coffee and go through the whole history, because I was there.
But
I was
it's also-
standing at the podium.
if members of the
bidding
public are
for the
getting
property,
confused and that's causing problems to people besides us, then I think it's beneficial to everybody just to provide 2 sentences of background and a spreadsheet. It's not, you know what I mean? I don't think I'm
Sure. I can
Yeah,
do that.
all right.
I can do that. Yeah.
And I just want to say, for the public, if there are questions on the history, I am happy. Please contact me. I'm happy to share that history with anybody.
And then we are inviting Maria Fisk in January to do a presentation on the Carpinteria Children's Project. So I think that would be helpful as well.
Great.
And-
Good information.
And maybe at that time, I think it'd be a great opportunity to clarify,
The relationship.
the
Yes.
financial relationship and the
Sure.
fiscal relationship and how things have changed,
Sure.
and then have it
We
in a
can invite
document.
Pam Lewis, she'd
Yeah.
be happy to talk about that.
So thank you. I feel very clear on it now. So I appreciate that discussion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Okay, move on to Measure U. We're being asked to accept the completed contract for the new roofing at B&F Wings at the Carpentry High School with Channel Islands Roofing. The completed construction contract totals $502,936.70, paid with Measure U funds.
Move to approve.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, nothing personnel. Board communications, Rogelio.
Well, I just want to say that we hope that we can get everything going for all the school sites. Regarding the scores, the goals, actually, all the schools have, I think, 4 goals, 1, 2, 3, 4. I hope that we all together can meet each one of those. And I hope that we can work out on this, everyone together.
Doesn't? Michelle? Maureen?
I think for me, the Thanksgiving break is always a good reminder for me of just how blessed we are in this community with our agricultural abundance. So I'm just hoping that more and more we can make connections with our with our local farmers, and partner with our local farmers, and bring that food abundance that we all see around us into the classrooms and into our schools, and continue that blessing and bounty of food that's all around us.
Great, thanks. I don't have anything either. So board calendar, we have a budget study session on the 30th of January, 21st of February, and the 21st of March. All right. I think we're good. We're adjourned. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Thanks.